Good morning. All right, how about now? Good morning. And now we're all really awake. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Reverend Sally Fritchie, and I serve as the Associate Minister of this congregation, alongside our lead minister, Reverend Karen Bush, or KB. We are a church of many different theologies and identities, united by our shared commitment to building community, seeking inspiration, promoting justice, and finding peace. We're still asking that everyone remain masked when we gather on Sunday mornings because we want to be able to welcome even the most vulnerable into our shared worship space. Although we plan to revisit our masking policies in the weeks to come, so stay tuned. You can look around at the color-coded lanyards of your neighbors and be aware and respectful of others' needs and boundaries. If you're nervous about being packed into the sanctuary, we do have spillover room just across our entryway in Fellowship Hall, where the service is being live streamed on our projector. That space is also great if you just need to stretch your legs or enjoy a little more wiggle room. We are a congregation of all ages, which means we embrace all the noises and conversations and little disruptions that kids can bring into a Sunday morning. As always, people of all ages are welcome to get a coloring kit from the box in the entryway, just near where the lanyards are. And after the time for all ages, kids will be invited to head downstairs with their teachers for religious exploration classes. Tomorrow is a national holiday, honoring the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Black civil rights leader assassinated 55 years ago at the age of just 39. And today's service is one focused on the life and message of Dr. King. Every year, we get this reminder and opportunity to re-examine the ways we remember King, a chance to go deeper than his most famous "I Have a Dream" sound bites, and actually challenge ourselves to live up to the vision he had of beloved community and revolutionary change. Today, we will see him through a lens specific to our Unitarian Universalist tradition and reflect on the ways in which UUs contemporary to Dr. King showed up for his cause and what we can learn today from those efforts and relationships. Whether this is your first Sunday with us or your 1,000th, whether you're here in the sanctuary, across in Fellowship Hall, or watching from afar, know that you are welcome here, and this service is for you. May you find in it something that you need. This congregation chooses to begin every Sunday with a formal acknowledgement of the indigenous peoples of this land. It's a practice we continue because it connects us to the history of this specific place, to our role as stewards and members of a community that extends beyond our own present moment. So wherever you are joining us from today, take a moment to let your mind sink down into the deep history of that place and honor the plants, animals, and people who have belonged to it over the millennia. Here on Green Street, we worship on the land of the Kaskaskia, Miamiwa, Bodwewadmi, Kickapoo, Peoria, and Oceti-Sakowin. These are communities that still exist today and continue to fight for recognition, self-determination, and the preservation of our shared earth. We'll pause to take a breath in honor of those lives and as a reminder to support their ongoing efforts wherever we can. Thank you. Now, I welcome into the pulpit longtime UUCUC members Sandy and Joe Finnerty to light the flaming chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition.
Good morning. We UUs begin our gatherings by lighting a flaming chalice, symbol of our UU tradition, often with words spoken in unison, meant to invoke a spirit of contemplation and togetherness. If you are watching today's service from afar, you have a candle or chalice of your own to light, I invite you to do so now and join us in creating this shared circle of warmth and light, even across the distance. Today's chalice lighting words are adapted from the 20th century Universalist and pacifist Clinton Lee Scott. I invite you to read along with me from your order of service or from the screen. Always, it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision. It is easier to venerate the saints than to learn the human quality of their sainthood. It is easy to glorify the heroes of history than give weight to their examples. Let this light we kindle illuminate the lives of those who are now serving us with the word.
Last week, UUCUC member Janet Ravel Barrett led us in singing the hymn Rise Up, O Flame, along with teaching us some accompanying movements inspired by American Sign Language. Today, we are going to return to that hymn, partly as a way of inscribing it deeper into our memory and getting familiar with it. In the UU congregation I grew up in, Rise Up, O Flame was the song that we sung every Sunday as we lit our chalice, so it holds a special place in my heart, especially when a congregation is confident enough to really enjoy singing it as a round, voices overlapping and interweaving. This morning, MR will start us out, then Janet will join in, leading us in a two-part round. Please stand, if standing is comfortable for you, and join in singing hymn number 362 in the gray hymnal, Rise Up, O Flame.
Let's remember it once together in unison. Rise, ready, 1, 2. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Let's do it 3 times. I'll start you, and Janet will start you. Okay? Here we go, you're with me. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Beautiful. Now this is the part in the service when we tell a story or do an activity that's more interactive or geared toward UUs, many different ages and learning styles. Today we have not a story, but a song for all ages. This is Martin Luther King Jr. Sunday, when we honor the legacy of the civil rights movement in America, and music is a big part of that legacy. Marches and protests were places where people gathered strength from each other, and singing together was one way to build that sense of community and collective power. Some of the songs sung by marchers in that era made it into our hymnals, including this one, which is called When the Spirit Says Do. We're singing a simplified version of what's written in our hymnal, so don't bother opening up your books. Just like as if we were marching in the streets, we'll listen to each other, call and respond, and get better as we go along. We're learning by doing. I'm going to ask our drummers, Joe and Joe, to help us out, as well as MR. And any kids or anyone young at heart is invited to come forward to be closer to our drummers, or just move into the aisles where you might have space to march or dance or stomp or move along with the music. You're welcome to move at any point during the song. The words of this song go, we gotta do when the Spirit says do. And it's all about listening to our inner voice and the spirit of the greater movement in order to know when it's time to take action and get involved. Once we get comfortable repeating the verse a couple times, we can change the word do to any kind of action word that we like. So MR is going to teach it to us line by line. And once we get the hang of it, you can watch me up here to know what action word we're going to do next.
So we'll do it like this. I'll sing and you repeat. We gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 When the Spirit says do, we gotta do, oh Lord. When the Spirit says do, we gotta do, oh Lord. We gotta do when the Spirit says do. We gotta do when the Spirit says do.
All right, incredible. All right, now we're gonna stand up together and sing it all the way through, led by MR.
Ready? 1, 2. We gotta do when the Spirit says do. We gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, we gotta do, oh Lord. We gotta do when the Spirit says do.
We gotta move.
Move when the Spirit says move. We gotta move when the Spirit says move. When the Spirit says move, we gotta move, oh Lord. We gotta move when the Spirit says move.
We gotta shout.
Shout when the Spirit says shout. We gotta shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, we gotta shout, oh Lord. We gotta shout when the Spirit says shout.
We gotta rest.
Gotta rest when the Spirit says rest. We gotta rest when the Spirit says rest. When the Spirit says rest, we gotta rest, oh Lord. We gotta rest when the Spirit says rest.
We gotta march.
March when the Spirit says march. We gotta march when the Spirit says march. When the Spirit says march, we gotta march, oh Lord. We gotta march when the Spirit says march.
One last time, we gotta do.
When the Spirit says do. We gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, we gotta do, oh Lord. We gotta do when the Spirit says do.
All right, thank you all. And because now time for our kids and teachers to go downstairs, we have one last secret verse that we're going to sing seated. We got to learn when the Spirit says learn. And our kids and teachers will head downstairs while we sing. Ready? We got to learn when the Spirit says learn. We got to learn when the Spirit says learn. When the Spirit says learn, we got to learn, oh Lord. We got to learn when the Spirit says learn. Beautifully done. Thank you all. I saw some moves and some marches and some shouts. Very well done. All right, now we have our joys and sorrows, which Sandy will introduce.
Each Sunday here at UUCUC, we make space to share the joys and sorrows closest to our hearts. We usually take a long pause with music to give folks time to write down the personal joys and sorrows they are carrying and wish to share, either on a card or in an email message to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. Then the worship leader reads out those shared messages so that we can celebrate each other's joyful news and support each other's griefs. During the pause, while folks are writing and music is playing, those who wish to can come forward and silently light a candle here at our altar table or at the table near the center of the sanctuary. Together, we will hear our blessing song, Longtime Son. And while we listen and sing, you are invited to write the joys and sorrows you would like to share, either on a card, which you should be able to find in the back of the pew, or at the central back table, or in an email sent to joysandsorrows@uuc.org. And if you wish to, you can come forward to light a candle for your joy or sorrow and leave your card in the basket.
A joy from Kim S., who says, I am making huge strides in my physical therapy. A joy from Matt and Courtney Krafchick. We found Dinah last Sunday evening, the lost dog. She was lost for 36 hours, and amazingly, she was not badly hurt. From Jerry Fry and Priscilla Crone, today we feel so much joy and gratitude for belonging to this caring community. Why? Because next week we begin a 1-year journey through chemo and radiation to treat Priscilla's cancer, and we know UUCUC will have our backs. P.S. they write, gifts of company and laughter will always be welcome. Please know that for all the joys and sorrows that didn't make it up here today, because they remain unspoken, because they are too painful or too private, may they be held by this community all the same. Know that you are a part of something, a network of love that connects you to everyone who gathers here. I hope that you feel held and supported by that love today and every day. Now please take this moment of quiet prayer or meditation to find your own center, your own supportive network of love, your own words asking for what you need most. As the musical meditation plays, let us breathe together and rest in the stillness.
Peace will come one day, and all the world will sing a song of new beginnings, for war will be no more. All the years lie heavy through a time of pain. Oh, soon, sweet peace, oh, come. We will come together as we were meant to be, a family of people as far as you can see. No more separations, we shall be as one. Oh, soon, sweet peace, oh, come. There will come a time when love will reign supreme. Our years will come full circle, embracing peace at last. Tears will flow like rivers down the face of love. Oh, soon, sweet peace, oh, come.
This is a letter written by Coretta Scott King on October 31st, 1968, to Reverend Eugene Pickett, senior minister at the time of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta, Georgia. Dear Reverend Eugene Pickett, please convey to the members of your congregation my deepest appreciation for their help at the time of my husband's death. Their concern and sympathy were demonstrated in many ways and made a tragic and confused period less trying for my family and me. It would have been impossible to provide for the many visitors in my home without the generosity of the members of the Atlanta Unitarian Church. The food, transportation, and lodging which they provided will be remembered as a tangible demonstration of the brotherhood in action, which the Unitarian Church has always stressed. Opening, sorting, and handling the tremendous amount of mail sent to my children and me would truly have been an insurmountable task without the help of the people who responded to the Unitarian Church's appeal. Through the years, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta has been a leader in bridging the gap between the white and black communities. My family and I will always remember how warmly and willingly you extended friendship and love during our most difficult hour. Please know that we will always be grateful. Sincerely yours, Coretta Scott King.
As Unitarian Universalists, we draw meaning and inspiration from a variety of sources, including the world religions and our direct experiences of the sacred. And one of those sources we draw from is the words and deeds of prophetic people from history. This means that we find deep meaning in the lives of our fellow humans, considering them with the same reverence and attention that other faiths might give to Holy Scripture. It's that practice that leads us to observe Martin Luther King Jr. Day, not just as a national holiday, but as a religious holiday, a holy day, meant for pausing and reflecting on the words and deeds of a uniquely prophetic man. And Martin Luther King Jr. isn't just another historical figure, a great thinker. His life is so recent, so intertwined with our current ongoing spiritual and social efforts. There's enough depth and richness in the scripture of his words and deeds to fill a limitless number of Sunday sermons. My own lifetime doesn't overlap with King's, but many in this room did. Anyone over the age of 55. After all, American journalist Barbara Walters, who passed away just 2 weeks ago, was born the same year as King. Her death at the age of 93 might cause us inevitably to wonder what the world would look like if her age mate had lived to see 2023 as well. We could have had a world where Martin Luther King Jr. passed away just weeks ago, quietly in his home, surrounded by family. The recentness of King's lifespan means that we have access to a richer and more complicated, complete picture of the person he was and the demands he made of the world. He is so much more than the smoothed-over mythical figure now celebrated by politicians and talking heads who tend to repeat a few famous quotes and then go back the next day to busily undoing the social progress King actually fought for. And as UUs, given that the Unitarian Universalist Association first officially formed in 1961, it means we can examine our own history for a better understanding of the world Dr. King lived and worked within. We can go back to unearth what exactly he thought of us, what lessons he felt our faith community needed most to learn. So today, we'll ask ourselves, in that familiar MLK Day history of Birmingham and Selma and I Have a Dream, where were the UUs? Were we part of the story? in the background or center stage? And what might the answer to that question reveal about us and about the lessons that we're still learning today? When King put out a national call for clergy to show up and participate in the push for voting rights in Selma, Alabama, 40 UU ministers showed up, a disproportionate number for our relatively tiny and newly merged denomination. When Reverend James Reeb, one of those ministers, was murdered in Selma that week by white supremacists, his death sparked outrage across the nation. He was lifted up by UUs and others as a martyr to the cause. Reverend Dr. King gave the eulogy at James Reeb's funeral, saying that his only crime was that he dared to live his faith, that he placed himself alongside the disinherited Black brethren of his community. It was a powerful testament to the strength of the Unitarian Universalist commitment to racial justice and civil rights, an affirmation that even the threat of death wouldn't stop those who truly believed. Just 1 year later, Dr. King was the invited keynote speaker at our UUA's General Assembly, the vast annual meeting at which Unitarian Universalists gather from all over the nation, attend talks and classes, and vote on the direction of our national institution. Dr. King spoke in gratitude for all he had seen Unitarian Universalists give to the civil rights movement, and also in exhortation that they continue to engage, that UUs not sleep through the revolution, as he said. He centered his speech to the UUA on the story of Rip Van Winkle, in which the main character falls asleep for decades, and when he wakes up, is shocked and confused to see public images of King George III replaced with images of George Washington. He had slept through the American Revolution, and the world had changed in ways he couldn't understand. Dr. King told that story and implored the UUs in 1965 not to rest on the laurels of what had been achieved so far, not to sleep through the transformative revolution he hoped was still coming to America. He would continue to work with UU congregations and organizers off and on throughout the American South for those last 4 years of his life, growing bolder and more radical in his commitments to anti-war, anti-poverty, and pro-union efforts, right up until his assassination in 1968. Part of this annual returning again and again to the memory and legacy of Dr. King is about looking always for how his story fits into all the other ongoing stories of American life, including into our own story as a faith community. In different years, the story will get told from a UU pulpit in different ways. Thanks to our unique intertwined history, we can tell this chapter in a way that we are the heroes, the martyrs, standing shoulder to shoulder with the righteous and firmly on the right side of history. On those Sundays, we might offer a reading from King's eulogy for James Reeb, or a fiery sermon from a contemporary UU pulpit in support of civil rights efforts. We can also tell it in a way that historical UUs are something closer to villains, the hesitant white moderates, questioning King's methods and his more radical stances, valuing social stability above all else. On those Sundays, we challenge ourselves to be better, and we read from the letter from the Birmingham jail. There is no one story, because reality will always be more than just a story we can tell. So this year, we heard for our reading a letter written after King's death by his wife, Coretta Scott King, to the minister of the UU Church in Atlanta, thanking him for the practical and logistical support his congregation provided in the days following the assassination of her husband. Because I think it contains one of the most heartening human versions of the ways that UUs showed up in Martin Luther King's story. Not as heroes or villains, but as background characters, as sidekicks, supporters, as unnamed church volunteers opening mail, signing up to provide casseroles or pick people up from the airport. Coretta Scott King writes, "The food, transportation, and lodging will be remembered as a tangible demonstration of brotherhood in action. Opening, sorting, and handling the tremendous amount of mail would truly have been an insurmountable task without the help of the Unitarian Church." There's something so poignant, so preciously human about the image painted in this letter, not of a big march photographed for history books, not a prominent UU giving a speech or even a sermon. It's about the practical, necessary work of a community committed to showing up in whatever way they're needed. Not motivated by being on the right side of history or what they imagine the movement needs, but a simple and tangible demonstration of brotherhood in action, lifting an insurmountable task off the plate of those who are at the center of the most urgent need. What lessons might we learn today from that side of the story? That version of where UUs showed up in King's legacy, the direct, the relational, the unremarkable support that every movement for social change will need at some point. There's actually more to Coretta Scott King's relationship to Unitarian Universalism than what's contained in this thoughtful letter. One more moment of historical convergence I have to share with you. She was interviewed in 2002 by UU minister Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt for publication in the UU World magazine. And Coretta Scott King shared in that interview that way back in the 1950s, before the most remembered years of the civil rights movement, she and Martin had attended Unitarian churches quite frequently while they were living in the Boston area. They enjoyed them a great deal and gave some thought to becoming Unitarians. But they realized, quote, "We could never build a mass movement of Black people if we were Unitarian." And so they never officially joined. And when they eventually did start building their movement, it was in Black Baptist congregations in the South. The revelation of this interview should pierce the heart of every Unitarian Universalist. It does mine. Because it opens a glimpse into a history that could have been, if only our faith community had been different than it was. Because she wasn't wrong. A movement with its foundations in those Boston churches would never have been what the civil rights movement eventually became. The Unitarians, which in the 50s was still just Unitarians, not yet merged with Universalists, were mostly white congregations in mostly white towns in mostly white states. Even with a sincere desire to move the cause of integration and voting rights forward, a love for endless discussion and debate tended to slow down or derail urgent social action. It's painful to realize that our faith forebears were weighed, measured, and found justifiably wanting by one of the great leaders of a cause we so deeply believe in. UUs could play a part in the movement, and they did. We did, as history would show. But Coretta Scott King's initial conviction was right. The center of the civil rights movement, the beating heart from which everything else would flow, had to be built within Black churches. So I return again to the letter, the tangible brotherhood in action that meant so much to the King family in the days following the assassination. And when I put these contrasting moments of history together, I begin to see a message that is still needed today. We don't have to be at the center of the movement in order to contribute to it. Once said, it might seem glaringly obvious. We don't have to be at the center of a movement in order to contribute to it. Coretta Scott King and her husband felt that 1950s Unitarians would not be the place to build a movement for Black empowerment. We, our historical faith community, didn't have to be the heartbeat of the racial justice movement in order to feed and nourish it. move to its rhythm, be of tangible use to its goals. Of course this is true. But learning about a historical failure to be the most progressive, the most anti-racist church, it's a blow to our collective historical ego. It feels good and exciting when we get to be the most free and liberatory faith community at the ecumenical table, as we sometimes are on issues of LGBTQ rights, women's ordination, and certainly on theological pluralism. It's only natural that those are the histories we will hold up and be most proud of. It feels harder and more complicated to not be at the center of movements for social change. But that is where some of our most important work lies. And Coretta Scott King reminded me of that fact. Unitarian Universalist communities everywhere are still working through our own cultural whiteness, our microaggressions, the barriers our communities and institutions throw in front of UUs of color. And knowing our own flaws can make it harder to speak up from a place of moral authority. The plank in our own eye versus the speck in our brother's. There's a strong feeling like we UUs need to get our own house in order before we can be of any use to the wider world on racial justice. But spending time with the words of Coretta Scott King and the histories of her and her husband's relationship with our faith has me considering a different truth. Don't get me wrong, we do need to continue to get our house in order. Our commitment to the eighth principle, journeying towards spiritual wholeness, accountably dismantling racism in our institutions and beyond, is something we all need to be living into. But we don't have to have it all figured out and be a racially blended utopia before we start getting out there and putting our shoulder to the work of bending society's arc toward justice. Today, we remind ourselves that there is a long history of UUs showing up for justice not as heroes, but as sidekicks, as unnamed volunteers and supporters lending our hearts and hands to a cause that grows from deep roots elsewhere. If we can get past the ego wound of not being in the spotlight at the head of the class on racial justice, what possibilities does that open for collaboration and genuine progress, working with those who are getting a better grade than us, so to speak? How do we find and support those movement leaders who are leading well ahead of where we might be? We can continue to look within. We should continue our journey toward being the type of genuinely multicultural and racially diverse church that perhaps Coretta and Martin King would have joined and organized within. But we can also look for the voices that are calling for change beyond our comfort zone and start showing up before we've achieved our own standard of perfection. The goal is not for more UUs of color to join and help prove by their presence how anti-racist we are. The goal is not even to make sure that we're on the right side of some future history. The goal is to find those who are at the center of the most urgent need and be on their side. King's focus in his heyday was on voting rights and segregation, but racial justice can look like any number of things. I'm talking about the activists organizing to end cash bail or to upend incarceration altogether, unionization efforts, underserved patients seeking health care. We all have the power to listen for what is actually needed and provide it when possible, even when there's no glory in it, no megaphone or newspaper story. History won't remember the mail sorters or the casserole makers, but the work of justice becomes insurmountable without them. So in the famous and familiar story of Martin Luther King Jr., told and retold every year, where were the UUs? If we look, we see we were here, there, and everywhere. And how we choose to remember that will shape what we do next, how we make our way as a faith community through future revolutions, staying awake the possibilities and showing up in the ways that matter the most. May it be so, and amen. I'll invite you to please stand if you are able and join in singing verses 1 and 4 of We'll Build a Land, which is number 121 in the Gray Hymnal. The lyrics will be projected on the screen, and please note that the lyric Sisters and Brothers has been changed to People Together.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where people together, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build the land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where people together, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
We as Unitarian Universalists acknowledge that our circle of care doesn't stop at our doors. We are deeply connected to the community we find ourselves in and to the outer world. Please continue to keep an eye on your e-News weekly newsletter for opportunities to show up, find support, get involved, and be part of this community. This coming Saturday, the 21st, we are hosting a Pathway to Membership. For anyone new to UUCUC who might be interested in learning more about what it means to become an official voting member, plus enjoy a day of snacks, art, socializing with others who are at a similar place and getting to know the congregation. Showing up on Saturday doesn't mean you have to commit to joining, just a chance to learn more. At the end of that class, with 3 o'clock on Saturday, everyone from the whole congregation is invited to show up for a dessert buffet to celebrate and meet these newcomers in person. There are countless ways to get involved in the work of this community, and we have a special message this Sunday highlighting the many teams working within the Social Action Council here at UUCUC. If you are looking for practical ways to work alongside your fellow church members on issues that matter, listen to the short message and consider reaching out beyond Sunday mornings.
Good morning. My name is Pam Richard, and I am currently the convener of the Social Action Council. And now I may have you wondering, what is a Social Action Council? Who are our teams, and what are they working on? Racial justice is perhaps one of our most senior teams. They helped us adopt the 8th principle, which calls us to make our church a place of true diversity and to work for justice in our world. This team challenges the unjust, racist systems in our society and our community, partnering with NAACP and other community organizations. You'll likely know our immigrant justice team work from our hospitality project, where we provide emergency shelter to immigrants, and our backpack project, which we do as a welcoming gift to unaccompanied minors who come to our community. But we are also working with immigrant justice organizations in our community to prepare to receive busloads of immigrants from the border. And we're currently exploring the issue of human trafficking that's taking place right here in our community. Cultivate, our climate action team, is a remaking of our green team. And as their name conveys, the focus is on climate justice and sustainable living. You may recall the 4 worship services they led this past summer. Reproductive justice is one of our newest teams and encompasses racial equality, economic security for families, contraception access, sex ed, gender equality, and abortion rights and access. This new team was started to ensure that all have access to reproductive health care and not just some. Our LGBTQ plus welcoming team maintains our certification as a UU welcoming church, but they do much more. This team works to help us understand and honor our various identities, backgrounds, and experiences, and to create a safe, inclusive space in which people from many different gender identities, sexual orientations, and gender expressions can come together and feel they're at home. Food justice is our newest team. It includes a long-standing crop hunger walk that funds sustainable responses to hunger, poverty, displacement, and disaster all around the world. Many of you have participated in that. But this team also is responsible now for stocking and maintaining the little food pantry that you see installed at the front of our church. Partner Church is a long-standing team that maintains our relationship with Unitarian churches in Transylvania, Romania, and India. This team is looking for new leadership so that we can continue those close relationships. And finally, there's the shared offering team. This is the team that asks us to nominate local, state, and national organizations each year to be recipients of our church's shared offering program. It's the longest standing social action at our church and perhaps the best known. All of our teams want to grow, taking advantage of the time, the talents, and the passion that each one of you can bring. But perhaps one of the best part of our new model is that there's room to start a new initiative, provided there are people ready to take it on. We're going to be exploring, for example, the potential to work with others in our community to open up our church as a warming shelter, or center rather, during cold winter months. So does any of this interest you? We hope so. And we invite you to explore the Social Justice tab on our website for information about the work of each team. But please, you can always contact me at PamelaRichard1@gmail.com if you want more information. And we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks much.
Each Sunday, in recognition of our very real interdependence and reliance on each other, we pass the plate and share our offering with an organization doing the work of justice in the world. For our January Sundays, we are sharing our plate with the Chicago Abortion Fund, which provides direct financial, logistical, and emotional support to people seeking abortion care across the Midwest, including right here in Champaign County. The fund hears from over 500 people a month seeking help and returns 100% of their calls. You can give by text or through the online portal on our website, or if you are Here, in the sanctuary, the basket will be passed and checks can be made out to the UUCUC. Half of what will be given will go towards sustaining the work of this church. The other half will go directly to the Chicago Abortion Fund. We invite you to give whatever is generous for you, and know that anything you contribute will be greatly received, and to put to use help making the real impact for the people who need it. The basket will be passed.
Chalice, with these words from Reverend Terence Strauss, the current minister of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Atlanta, the church to whom Coretta Scott King's letter was addressed. Reverend Strauss writes, "These letters illustrate to us we need not be the great vocal leaders of a movement, always expressing ourselves and trying to be heard. We simply need to be in relationships of care and service with the folks who are doing the work. I don't know precisely what shape our service will take. I only know that our mission and our values require us to take a posture, an orientation, always facing outward. Our ancestors in faith are speaking to us now. May we be ready to listen."